700 euros per megawatt hour. That's what German electricity prices hit in 2022. 10 times the normal level. Factories are shutting down. BASF, the chemical giant, is moving production out of the country. Families are choosing between heating and eating. This is happening right now in the world's fourth largest economy. And it's not because renewables failed. It's because Germany made one catastrophic policy mistake. They shut down their nuclear power plants. They bet everything on cheap Russian gas to be the bridge fuel, the reliable backup for when the sun isn't shining and the wind isn't blowing. Then, Russia invaded Ukraine. The gas disappeared practically overnight. To keep the lights on, Germany had to fire up its old coal plants. The supposed climate leader started burning more coal than it had in years. The irony is brutal. The economic damage is even worse. So what exactly went wrong? And why does every country need to understand this before they make the same mistake? Let's look at the timeline. Germany launched the Energiewende, or energy transition, back in the early 2000s. The goal was ambitious: shut down all nuclear plants, phase out coal completely, and replace everything with wind and solar. They wanted to become the green leader the world follows. The plan sounded perfect on paper: clean energy, moral authority, a sustainable future. And, to be fair, Germany achieved some remarkable things. Renewables now provide over 50% of its electricity. That's a huge accomplishment. The costs of wind and solar have dropped dramatically, and long-term emissions did fall. These are genuine successes. But they came with hidden vulnerabilities that are now threatening Germany's entire industrial core. The nuclear shutdown actually started long before most people realize. It wasn't just after Fukushima in 2011. The push began under Chancellor Schroeder in the early 2000s, driven by Green Party pressure. Fukushima just accelerated what was already in motion. Could Germany have reversed course? Maybe. The reactor fleet was getting old, extension costs were high, and waste disposal was a huge political hot potato. Public opposition was deeply entrenched. But here's the undeniable fact. Germany willingly removed a power source, nuclear, that provided a quarter of its electricity. 25%? And they did this while attempting the world's most ambitious renewable transition before they had real, scalable solutions for when renewables don't produce power. Nuclear energy ran constantly. Weather didn't matter. It was carbon-free power, 24/7. When you remove that stable backbone while betting your entire grid on intermittent sources, you are building fragility right into the system. Now let's talk about that intermittency problem. Wind doesn't always blow. The sun doesn't shine at night. It sounds obvious, right? But what happens when both fail at the same time? Germany calls it the Dunkelflaute, the dark doldrums. This is when a winter high-pressure system settles over the country. You get freezing temperatures, zero solar generation, and almost no wind. And this can last for weeks. Peak heating demand hits exactly when power generation drops to nearly nothing. Solar produces zero. Wind capacity factors fall to single digits. Your batteries might provide power for a few hours, but not for weeks. You can import power from your neighbors. But what happens when they're in the same weather pattern and need their power too? When you need dozens of gigawatts for days or weeks straight, you need reliable, dispatchable power that you can turn on whenever you need it. So what was the plan for this? Natural gas. Cheap Russian natural gas was supposed to be the bridge, the reliable partner to renewables. It was the dispatchable power source that would fill the gaps. When the invasion of Ukraine cut off that supply, the entire strategy collapsed. Suddenly, the bridge was gone. Germany was left scrambling, restarting coal plants and facing an economic crisis. The lesson here isn't that renewables are bad. They are a critical part of our energy future. The lesson is that a successful energy transition needs to be built on a foundation of reliability. You cannot remove your firm, clean power sources like nuclear before you have a proven, scalable, and affordable replacement that works 24/7, 365. Ignoring the need for baseload power is not a strategy. It's a gamble. And for Germany, that gamble has had devastating consequences for its industry, its people, and its climate goals. Germany's green energy dream turned into a nightmare. Here's the story you won't hear in the headlines. It all starts with a simple problem: geography. Germany built massive offshore wind farms in the north, but the factories and cities that need that power are in the south. The transmission lines to connect them, years behind schedule. This created massive grid congestion costing billions. When the wind blew and the sun shone, Germany often had too much green power, so they just had to turn it off. Wasted. To solve this, Germany planned to use natural gas power plants as a flexible backup for when renewables weren't producing. It seemed like a solid plan until February 2022. When Russia invaded Ukraine, gas supplies were cut, and prices shot up 10 times their normal level. Suddenly, Germany was in a crisis. With its nuclear plants already shut down, it had no choice but to fire up old coal plants it had promised to close forever. The world's supposed climate leader was burning more coal than ever. This emergency was only possible because of a fatal flaw in the strategy. By phasing out nuclear power, Germany had removed 25% of its own clean, reliable domestic energy. It made itself dangerously dependent on imported Russian gas. If those nuclear plants had remained online, Germany's climate credibility would be intact, and the economic damage would have been far less severe, and the damage was catastrophic. Wholesale electricity prices soared past 700 euros per megawatt hour. For comparison, US natural gas prices during the same crisis were just a fraction of that. German factories were suddenly paying 3 times more for electricity than their American competitors. For energy-hungry industries, this was a death sentence. Here's a dose of engineering reality. Nuclear power plants run at about 90% capacity. They're always on. Offshore wind in Germany runs at 45%, onshore wind 30%, and solar just 12%. You need a colossal amount of new renewables to replace the steady, reliable power that nuclear provides. As a result, German households now pay some of the highest electricity prices in the world. Major industries are now questioning their future in Germany. The chemical giant BASF is openly talking about moving production to America and Asia where energy is cheaper. Aluminum, steel, glass, all the industries that form the backbone of German manufacturing are rethinking their investments. When these companies leave, they take everything with them. The jobs, the tax revenue, and the engineering talent that made Germany an economic powerhouse. The country is now risking a downward spiral that could reshape its entire economy. And the irony is staggering. While Germany struggles, its neighbor France is doing just fine. Why? Because 70% of French electricity comes from its nuclear fleet. In fact, France now exports its nuclear-generated power to Germany whenever the German grid comes up short. Think about that. Germany's green transition is now partially dependent on French nuclear power for stability. Now, this isn't a rant against renewables. Wind and solar are absolutely crucial. But Germany's story reveals a critical lesson about sequencing. Germany ripped out its reliable, carbon-free baseload power before it had a workable solution for the intermittency of renewables. It tried to run the most ambitious energy transition in history while removing the one tool that provided stability. External shocks just expose this vulnerability in the most brutal way. So what's the right way forward? A strategy that uses everything. Nuclear provides the stable foundation. Renewables generate cheap power when the weather cooperates. Gas provides flexible backup. And we scale up energy storage as it becomes affordable. We need realistic timelines that don't gamble with energy security. Germany's experience proves that 3 things matter above all else: sequencing, shock resilience, and baseload capacity. Get those wrong, and the consequences can last for generations. Energy policy is an engineering problem, not a moral campaign. If this analysis gave you a deeper perspective than you normally see, hit that like button and subscribe for more breakdowns of the systems that run our world. Share this with anyone whose decisions depend on energy. What do you think is the right path forward? Let me know in the comments. See you in the next one.